is episode 8. Hope y'all enjoy. This one should probably be a short one, we'll see.
Well, that depends on how angry do you want to make your wife. I'm sorry,
Girlfriend. You have to be careful with that. You accidentally present that you're married.
Common law.
You can become common law sort of.
So I apologize. Cut that out.
Yeah. Eventually we'll get married, that's for sure. Come back to Metalocalypse in a little bit.
Well, I'm trying to. I'm kind of hoping that what'll show up on the Adult Swim stream, will be a Rick and Morty episode, because, as we have covered in the past, in fact, I believe it was the beginning of one of our blogs. I had a look of horror on my face. I was aghast. I literally had been knocked out of my socks. I was just shocked that Evan had never seen Rick and Morty. So I'm kind of hoping that it'll show up on the stream.
So wait, there's an Adult Swim has a live stream?
Yeah,
it's a stream, and
it actually has several streams. It's got a live action stream which has all of the live action shows that it did, like Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell, and I can't think of one right now. I'm sorry, but there's a few.
It's like watching TV, basically. That the next programming that comes up, you never really know.
Unfortunately,
they don't have a schedule.
They don't have a schedule for
which is kind of cool. That's kind of a cool way to experience things, like spontaneously.
Yeah,
the flow of life, man.
Okay,
the flow of consciousness podcast that we have is
so
supreme.
I'm going to tell you about my early days with YouTube, when YouTube was a brand new thing. Okay, maybe when it was like 3 years old. I went onto YouTube, and you could randomly play things. It would grab something from somewhere.
You could just hit the random button?
Randomly it would play things, and I loved it. Because I would see some of the weirdest entertainment.
That was like the same effect as that has chat roulette is like that, right? That you get this.
Chat roulette is wonderful. It's wonderful.
I've heard it's for. I think it went through. I don't know if it even exists anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
Mm-hmm. We could pull it up right now. Nobody could see us because I have the camera blocked off. But
right. Huh. But that's there was a period of time there where there was just a lot of dicks on there. From what I've heard, I don't know.
Yes.
Once I heard that, I was kind of like, well, I only went on there probably.
Well, now there
once
are
or twice, anyways.
There are other things that have replaced it. So there's like slut roulette, I think, is one, and what's it called? Chatterbait. That one's fun, I tell you.
Do you remember the $1 million page online? I think it's called the $1 million page. But the guys split it up, so what it is, it's there's a million ad spots on this website.
And he sells them for $1 a piece.
And he sold them for $1 a piece, yeah. And then people were like marking it up and stuff. And I think like the last few blocks that he sold, he got like $20,000 a piece for. So he made way more than $1 million on it.
Maybe.
Yeah, pretty burnt.
I mean, that's an idea. I mean, and frankly, that right there, that is the definition of $1 million idea.
Well, that happened the year I went off to college, so it was 2005.
Okay.
And that page is still out there.
Well, he's probably still making money off of it too, if he hasn't sold it for.
Yeah, a bit, because like whoever hears this podcast, someone might go to that website and might buy one of those spots now from someone else. But I think they still retain some value, and it's weird that you can create something and put it on the internet, and if you can monetize it somehow, it manages to stick around. And it's almost like, I think people, I don't know, maybe there's people out there that bought those things, that website, and they go there regularly now. I don't know. But you would think they would like fall out of trend. That, you know, a lot of websites that I go to, I only go to once. You know, never go back to it.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I'm with you on that.
But it's almost kept alive. That website value and prosperity is kept alive by the sheer volume of people that exist in the world, and stories being recycled and told, and people doing Google searches and running continue to, you know, newer people continue to go to that web page, and that's probably what's keeping it alive. And now that you got, I don't know how many people are on the web now, but it's like 2 billion people or something, probably, or 3.
Well, okay, so China isn't actually on the web, so we can discount 1.3 billion people, or however many people there are in China, right?
Well, they can access
India
if they use a VPN, if they break the law, and they can do it and get away with it. So
what are we
get
talking about here? Are we talking about like 100 million people then?
I think all of China. Well, not all of China. Probably a good half of China is on the internet. But how many people use VPNs? Oh my God, like nobody, dude.
Okay.
Like,
so
if it's
like,
more than like 30,000 people, I would be shocked.
Okay.
Who in their life is gonna like? Why would you do it? And the only reason that the Chinese people usually do it is if somebody in foreign press talks shit about one of their athletes and they have a broken heart about it because they're really nationalistic. So one of China's swimmers got caught doping. I think that happened in the Olympics. And they talked about it on the media that he failed an anti-doping test or something, and people that was like one of the things that drove people to go and get VPN to get out of over the Great Firewall of China, to go and comment on some news story.
Okay, well, I guess if you have your hair up in a hackles raised, that's the word, you know. You do anything. But okay, so we can discount about 1.3 billion people from the internet, right? Okay, so sort of. India, I would say easily 80% of their population is on the internet, so that's pretty close to 1 billion.
Yeah.
Europe is what, 600 million people? So that's another 500 million. We got the United States, which is 360 million people. I'm just guesstimating here. Yeah. So we're pretty much up to 2 billion.
What percentage of websites are published in English?
A lot of them.
Well, it's like
few.
When you think about the critical masses, like are people for our example about the $1 million page, like people from Russia, like unless I don't know, but you can translate everything, but I would think that there the language barrier exists on the internet, that people in certain countries are less likely to see content from other people. But these days, not really. I mean, people are on Twitter and you know, have sign-in names that are in Mandarin that appear right next to someone's sign-in name in English, and you know, and people, whatever language you want to type, it can be sent in a message, and you can send a message with multiple languages, and you can automatically translate everything. It's interesting because it really has globalized the internet. I think, you know, if you went back like 15 years before translation was really easy on the internet. I remember like 10 years ago, I would have to go to a website. Not even, I think.
Well, I could Google Translate.
Yeah, well, now we have a plugin on our browser that'll automatically translate it. Whenever I go to a foreign language website, Google will ask me if I want to translate it, like a pop-up.
Okay. Oh,
But
yeah.
it used to be harder, you know. And yeah, it's a. I know there was a point I was trying to get at that got lost.
Translating.
It went up in smoke. Well, like how if you have a website out there and you're selling some product, and there's people visiting your page, and if you keep that active somehow, you know, there's so many people in the world. There's an audience.
Well, don't they have separations for countries? I mean, like, isn't like a website in the United Kingdom with a .co.uk, and then like a website in Germany ends with a .de?
Yeah. Deutschland.
Deutschland.
No. No one is allowed to express any German nationalism anymore. That's shunned upon.
America first.
Did you see that video of Angela Merkel? Like, she's at some EU rally, and somebody brought her flag to like wave around. And it's an EU meeting, so like all the other leaders are on stage with her, like waving their little flag. Somebody gives her the flag of Germany, and she takes it and she looks at it and she goes, "Ugh," and she throws it down on the table. And, like, refuses to wave her flag. Like, "Ugh, I'm not going to be a nationalist." Thank you.
Well, I mean, that is kind of an adult way to look at things.
Well, there's some people that would say, like, "Oh, you're doing the exact same thing Hitler was doing." I think that's kind of the motive for Germans to hide their nationalism. That if they do it, it's immediately like, "Oh, really? That's what you think, huh?" Have you been to Germany?
Yeah.
You know, like when you're in these like city centers looking at historical places, if you're talking about, they don't like you talking about Nazis in public. We like went on a tour and they had to keep everything really brief when we were standing next to some statue, and a police officer came over and was like eavesdropping on the tour guides.
Well, okay.
To make sure that they weren't.
Are you? I mean, well, think about it. I mean,
And that was in 2008. You know.
But your country did something that you're still being stigmatized for, even though your people have changed. And
There's like a national insecurity, I think you could call it.
I might call that a modest representation of the way that society should act as a whole.
They're really worried about what everybody else thinks about them.
Okay, now
They're altering their behavior in irrational ways.
In some
to this
cases,
day,
yes.
like I think it's kind of worn out at this point. Like, yes, obviously, but you know, I think the rest of the world's forgiven Germany now. You know, like hardly anybody that's alive that from those war periods are alive today. You know, like the generations have come and gone, and it's kind of in that block of history now where things aren't looked at how they used to be looked at. Right?
But what's almost the first insult that comes out of anybody's mouth?
Hitler.
You're a Hitler.
You're Hitler.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is literally Hitler. Literally.
That's an illogical statement.
Donald Trump is literally Hitler. Type it in on Twitter, man. You should see how many people said it. Donald Trump is literally Hitler. That's funny, though. You know, we know who says things like that. They're people that are younger, or they didn't complete high school with with passing grades in English. I mean,
or they're governors of small towns in Alaska. I'm just saying.
Yeah, there's that too. It's a tough world. There's like to be able to go on TV and to like go on especially like a political program, to go on Bill O'Reilly's show and to not be made a fool of. It's so easy to do, especially if you're Bill O'Reilly, where you're like, okay, I can kind of look at some of the things they've said before, and I can poke them this way, and then I know that they're gonna respond this way, and then I've got writers, and then you've got the power of like 10 writers behind like what happens next? And they throw down zingers, and we all have flaws in logic, you know, that if we actually think about, we're like, oh yeah, that groupthink idea is kind of dumb when you actually like kind of break it down a bit.
But what if we, instead of being nasty and attacking and trying to discredit and delegitimize those people, we attempted to listen to them and take them through the logic of where their argument leads? I mean, would that not be a more productive use of our resources, our time, our thoughts, and our actions?
The electricity to send those signals around. Yeah, well, that's not entertaining, is it? You know? And if you just inform people of everything, you know, you might as well just give them acid and then just have a grand awakening.
So when are we going to start putting Christians in arena with lions again? I'm waiting for that.
Want to know something interesting about the lions that were used by the Romans? That they're not like African lions like you would think, right? They were Asiatic lions. So the lions that were used in the Colosseums were actually a different species of lion from the lion that you're familiar with in Africa. It's the Asiatic lion.
So where they,
which is actually quite a bit smaller. I think they're a little bit smaller, and there's a really small population of them that are still alive,
well, I mean,
and it's in India
where'd they get them
or
from?
in Pakistan.
Where'd they get them from? I mean, did they trade with Persia or something? I mean, what the hell?
Yeah, they brought them through the Silk Road or something. I don't know.
Romans are weird.
I'm not a historian, dude. I just memorize like little facts.
Yeah, Romans are weird, though. I mean, well, they kind of have a reason to be.
Did you know there's a species of cheetah in Iran that lives in the desert? It's the Asiatic cheetah or the Persian cheetah. And there's also a species of jaguar, the Persian jaguar.
That would make sense.
I mean, I think these are technically subspecies that I'm talking about. They're not a totally different species.
Well,
I think they're subspecies.
Isn't most of Iran like Colorado?
You would think it's like a desert, but there's like, I think more towards the north, there's like rainforest. Sort of a
I don't know if
thing.
they're rainforest, but
Well,
there's,
no, you've
definitely
got heat up there.
Yeah.
I mean, people go into the jungle to get away from the heat, and they have like all these huge gardens that were inspired from the water features in nature in Iran. If you want to learn more about that, you can check out a documentary on YouTube. I think if you search like Iranian or like Iran wildlife on YouTube, let me see. I'll pull something up here. I just watched it the other day. It was pretty good. I think it was a BBC one. But it may have been a Discovery Channel. Iran wildlife documentary. The one I watched is called The Journey into Wild Iran, or Iran, English, is the title on YouTube. And it's 52 minutes and 11 seconds long. And really eye-opening. It's amazing, like the things, like in my mind I think about, if I think about Iran, I don't think that there's, I think of it as mostly being desert, and I don't know, it's probably just because I'm ignorant, but when I watched that documentary, man, that blew my mind. It's a good one to watch.
Wait, what, huh?
I was just telling him which Iranian wildlife documentary.
Oh, about the
I watched,
cheetahs and the
yeah.
jaguars.
Yeah, it goes over like pretty much all of the ecosystems there, and the unique species that are still alive there, and they've had conservatory like NGOs, non-governmental organizations, for a number of years now. Who knows if they're having success? I think the cheetah is having a really hard time because it actually lives in the desert, and they have huge ranges and roam around quite a bit.
Well, there's some antelope, I think, in Russia. Is it Russia or Kazakhstan? Somewhere. There's this large, vast area that we used to call the USSR that I can never remember what part is what now.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
But
former Russia. Somewhere in former
Russia.
Russia.
somewhere over there. There was antelope herds that were dying because of methane. Well, I don't know if they figured it out, but I think they were pointing towards methane release. What was it in the Taiga? Is that the name of the land? Taiga?
Interesting. Taiga. Let me see.
Taiga, maybe. It's like halfway between tundra and forest, I guess, maybe.
As antelope die-off ends, the mystery deepens. That's a crazy thing that happens. There can be areas just in the landscape where methane's just coming up, right? You just have this natural gas coming up from the ground, and you'll have like a dip in the ground, right? Like a small geologic feature.
Yeah.
And maybe a stream runs through it, right? And it kind of creates like a little place for natural gas to pool.
Yeah.
Something will go down there, some prey animal will drink some of the water, fall over and die, right? And then you got this dead body right there. And then what happens? Then a coyote comes around and sees the deer, and then goes over and dies. And then something else comes over, eats it, and you'll have this pile of like dead animals that'll show up.
I mean, they might figure it out pretty quick after a few dead animals, but yeah, I mean, there will be.
I think this is something that's like, this happens, like to this day this happens, that sometimes people will be going around in the wild and they'll see this little kill area, and it's like you don't even want to go down there, because if you go down there you could die. I think there's some of those that are like known spots.
I mean, but that's freaky though. I mean, that's just weird. Well, I'm sure there's an explanation for it somewhere, but I mean, just these massive, die-off of things. I mean, some of them you can point to certain things.
Oh, dude, I think it points back to the magnetic poles. The magnetic pole changing. When you ran in our last podcast, I was talking about it for a little bit, but about how they're developing research techniques for studying the magnetic fields and how magnetic pole shifts would occur.
Yeah,
the magnetic North Pole floats around. It doesn't stay at a single fixed location. It moves about and on a daily pace. I mean, I think it probably stays within like a 30 or 40 foot area, something like that, like on a daily rate. But over months, I mean, it can move around like hundreds of miles.
Yeah,
it's floating all the time, and it's become more unstable recently than in prior history. And I don't think we have much history going back of measuring the really specific location of that magnetic North Pole. So if there, like the pot is starting to boil, you could say.
Well, it's frightening because it's that magnetic field that's created that keeps us safe from the solar wind.
People think it might like go down for a period of time, like 3 days or something.
That would be devastating.
I've heard that being cited by like metaphysical types.
Yeah, I mean that would be devastating to this planet, though.
I don't know how it could go down. It's not like what. So it's going to cancel itself out for a while.
See,
I
and
mean,
I don't
you got
think
this
I don't
liquid
think, yeah.
magnetic iron core. It's putting out a magnetic pole forward. It's a giant magnet. That magnetic field can't just totally disappear. It can become very scrambled for a while. And maybe, with it being really scrambled, you sure as hell could have northern lights, like, down at the equator.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, for a while, because, as it's kind of shifting about, but I don't think it would totally go away. And I think we would be probably just fine. I think the biggest threat to us is a giant asteroid hitting the planet. I think that's like the one thing that, like, really could wipe us out, could really end the game for everyone.
Yeah.
Or 99% of people.
It would be a significant portion.
But that could be avoided if we put, collectively, if some of our tax dollars went to patrolling the skies and developing the technologies to do it more efficiently, and developing the technologies why haven't they tried to, like, push around an asteroid and really dive into working out the techniques for when we do find one that's going to be a collision course and it's big. Like, we should be testing that technology. We shouldn't be,
But we don't know how it will affect the surrounding asteroids. Until we have a better understanding of how everything is affected by everything else, we really have to be careful.
Well, if it's an asteroid and it's coming towards us, there's not. I mean, there might be some smaller ones around it. There probably will be.
Sure.
But I think we should be developing. I don't know. It's really simple shit. It's billiard ball physics.
Okay. Yes, but
I mean, you could just fly a rocket. You could just fly one of the Tesla rockets, like, directly into an asteroid if you were able to, and you would definitely change its course, probably enough to knock it from hitting Earth.
But we're also keeping track of the over 200,000 bits of debris that are orbiting the planet right now. We are trying to keep
all the space junk.
We are trying to keep track of every asteroid and comet that's out there, but we just don't have the ability to do it yet. I mean, we're trying.
I think we just need the money. I think I would be shocked if there aren't people that have already developed an entire plan and they're like, we just need $1 trillion a year and we'll have it figured out in 3 years and we'll be good.
Fair enough. I mean, let's
throw enough money at anything, right?
Well, let's throw.
But like, how crazy are we? Like, if we were to get hit by a huge asteroid, let's say one that wasn't like kill everybody, but one that, like, made it so that we didn't see the sun for like a month and a half.
Yeah.
Where it was, pretty destructive and destroys. Let's say it destroys like one or two major countries. Let's say it hits like the UK and like just wipes the whole island. It's just like destroyed, and there's a huge wave that comes in and washes in on both coasts and all around. You'd have a huge fucking tsunami. But
sure,
all in all, not that big of a loss percentage-wise. The human population only suffered like a 3% loss or something from it, right?
Okay, and that was Evan's comment for the UK people. That was Evan.
Well, if it was anyone, and if you're looking at it as a scientist, you have to be heartless if you're a scientist. That's part of playing this game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we would be like, holy shit, if that happened, that $1 trillion a year to make sure that never happens again, and thank God it wasn't a little bit bigger and it wasn't coming in at a little bit of a steeper angle, because it could have, knocked a part of the planet off,
Sure. Well, and I agree with you.
That's probably what it's going to take, because, like, what motivates us?
Well, that's
fear, and like we don't even like. I don't want to have like. I don't want this podcast to be like a fear porn, sort of a thing, but. I mean, we should be very afraid of asteroids. I think it's very logical for us to have a healthy fear of that, and to try to petition whoever needs to be petitioned to keep us all safe, for God's sakes.
I'm going to disagree with you on this point. I don't think there should be a fear of that. I think there should be an awareness of that.
I think that we should respect it, and we should know what's coming in because of the respect of the potential damage.
Sure, and I agree with that.
To tone it down a little bit.
But so the budget for NASA used to be 4% of gross domestic.
Yeah, I don't think this is like a NASA thing we need. We need
But they're the ones who are working the research, trying to find things, exploring out there, trying to figure out how the solar system works, getting this, that, and the other thing. This move to private companies, I think, is a bad move. Even though we have seen, SpaceX, but how many of SpaceX's things have exploded? And
it's just that what you have to do is you have to.
Because NASA, how many explosions
you have to
did
make
NASA
these
have?
big ass corporations answer to the government.
Yeah, but how many explosions did NASA have? I mean, what was probably the worst accident was the Gemini accident, I believe, where the oxygen flow was too rich in the cabin.
They lost 4 in Columbia, right? 4 people blew up in the Columbia launch.
Oh, you're going way forward.
In total, what did they lose? 20 astronauts?
I mean, very, very. I mean,
the military loses people all the time.
Yeah.
Seriously, they have a crash when they're flying around trainer jets and people are learning stuff. I mean, it's a high risk game, and there's jets that there's. I mean, I think over the past couple of years, there's been a number of training accidents where soldiers have died on U.S. soil. It's an unfortunate thing that happens, and I think NASA's way under quota. I think they've done a really good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and they've been sending people, away from the planet in an environment that, I mean, they have thought about this. They have rechecked it. They have systems upon systems upon systems, because when you're in outer space, I mean, there's no atmosphere. I'm sorry. They don't make martinis. They don't have a piano bar off to the side. It's just a pretty boring nothing.
Right.
And you have to be able to sustain. I mean, you have to take a piece of Earth off of the planet with you. And so they have to rethink it, because if you don't have it right, I mean, I suppose human life could be disposable, but I would prefer to think it not. It's just, I mean,
it's what's kind of depressing to think about is that does our species have the ability to eventually be sending people on trips into space, right? Where the common person gets to go to space. So far, there's very few people that have ever even been to space.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at a point where we've been so busy with making money and not progress that we've only had whatever it is, probably, I don't know, maybe 500 people have been to space now, if that. Beats me. But if it's more than 500, I'd be surprised.
Few people.
Less than 0.001% of the human population has been to space, and it's fuck. Well, why is that? We're so busy chasing money that we aren't going anywhere. We're stuck on this planet.
We're growing, but
there's a lot to do on this planet, but you're stuck on it. You can't get off of it, and you're probably not going to get off of it in your lifetime, unless some pretty serious changes are made and things really change.
Well,
with people and how people interact with each other, and
who was it?
I don't see it happening for a while.
They were asking for volunteers for people to start training for a mission to Mars, and I think they said no, don't expect to come back, but you will be, the first colonists on Mars.
Yeah.
The other thing is how much of the population is actually in shape enough to go into space. I mean, it requires. I mean, it's a stressful event leaving your planet.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to tie this into a great conspiracy theory that there's all these black budget projects going on where all these advancements in technology are happening, where maybe they have the ability to not burn fuel and use 60-year-old technology to get us to space, but they have some anti-gravity thing where even a person with a bad back will be okay, that it's no more than a G going up, really slowly. Are there things like that exist, or did as far as most of the advancements in space travel were like made in the 60s, and like we really haven't done shit since then. We haven't really gone anywhere since the 60s. Our technology hasn't really gone anywhere. Like the rockets that they use for SpaceX, they're rockets that are made in Russia, and it's like a 35-year-old design. I mean, that should be kind of telling to you. Like, is that the new iPhone? Or is that like a rotary dial, you know? I mean, I don't know. It's a great conspiracy theory that these, and this is what Dr. Greer talks about, that the military-industrial complex and Lockheed Martin and all these massive government contractors are receiving all of this black budget money. You know, like the two. Didn't the Pentagon say they lost like $1 trillion or like $1.2 trillion that they can't account for? That all of that has gone to these black budget projects, and that they have. I don't know. I mean, I don't even like to say it because it's just like, oh, Evan's saying that there's flying saucers that are made by man flying around. Like, I don't even want it to be associated with me, but
that I believe.
But like top secret stuff that we don't know about, and I'm not. And like every so often we find out about some new aircraft that they have, like the Flying W thing. But that was developed in like, wasn't that developed in the 60s? Like a stealth bomber.
70s, 60s. Well, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it was the 60s.
You know, one of those stealth bombers, I think one of the newer ones, not the newest one, but the one prior, it has a propulsion system that runs on electricity. It uses electricity to make gravitic forces, or something like that, in the tip of the wing. So there's like some crazy, like basically some kind of like anti-gravity, and that I'm pretty sure that's like in their declassified drawings of it. You can see that there's this system.
I need to learn how to make me one of those.
I know. There's a guy that supposedly made flying saucers in the 60s in his backyard with a handful of other scientists. His name is Otis T. Carr. Carr. And basically, I'll give you the short run on it. That I think he was friends with Tesla. Tesla gave him the designs, and this was after Tesla was kind of like, after like he really wasn't doing anything. You know, I think he was feeding pigeons in a park in Central Park. I think that was the story in his later years, and this is when Otis Carr befriended him.
Okay.
He realizes that Otis is smart enough to take this technology and actually develop this flying machine. And you can look up I think if you search Otis T. Carr and you go on Google Images, it'll come right up. But supposedly he built these things, and they built some that were like 40 feet long, and eventually the government came and shut him down. And then he died. Like Otis Carr died like 2 years after that, and there was like 12 people, like I think, working on that project with him at that time. And one of the guys that was working with him, his name is Ralph Ring, and he is still alive, and he's talked about the experience and how the experience of flying on this machine. It's a really, really fascinating story. But Otis Carr, I think he even patented the design. The patent office wouldn't give him a patent, so he made it like an amusement device. But his drawings are like clearly not an amusement device in his patent that he submitted. And yeah, it's really strange how.
Anybody built one of those recently?
Yeah, there's people like on YouTube that build that are trying to build some of like the basic components of the device. And the basic component is called a Utron, and a Utron is made up of a few different parts, but one of those parts is a double cone that has a 90-degree angle on the top. So it's like it kind of looks like if you had two Hershey's Kisses with the circles pressing against each other. Mm-hmm. And that's like made of metal, and that spins around on an arbor through horseshoe magnets. and I don't really understand how the thing works, but that kind of describes what's going on in there. So you have, a few of those things spinning around in the outer perimeter of the disc craft, and then what's actually attached to the disc on the outside are these horseshoe magnets.
So that would be like that. Would it be using magnetic fields?
Yeah, it's using like magnetic fields and gyroscopic forces and precession of gyroscopic forces to basically the when those Utrons, those double cone things, are spinning, they're acting as a gyroscope. In addition to being made of metal and going through the horseshoe magnets and creating electricity there. And that electricity is used to spin the arbor and the outside of the hull of the craft. So they spin in opposite directions, but in sync with each other. And then there's a cabin that rides on a gear set that keeps it stationary while the hull of the craft is spinning in one direction, and this other part, this internal part that you wouldn't see from the outside, spins around in the other direction. So the basic elements there look a lot like what you would see like in the motor of a drone. If you can like look in with magnets, it kind of looks like that. But the gyroscopic forces are kind of an interesting thing. But supposedly, when you fire this thing up, if you're inside of it, Ralph Ring says he wrote in this thing, and you go inside, and there's a big bulb, like a light bulb, but it doesn't have any filament element in it. It just starts to light up once you fire this machine up, and it displays like a rainbow of color, right? Like the full spectrum, like a prism array of color, like a rainbow in there. And everybody inside the craft meditates on a specific color, which is this specific color that they used in their test flight was aquamarine. And aquamarine represented to all of them, because everyone was told this is what we're thinking, we all have to think the same here. Aquamarine is that spot 2 miles downrange from where we are right now. That's what aquamarine is, okay, everyone? And everyone sits in the craft and they fire it up, and then the globe with the rainbow of color changes and goes to aquamarine once it's all fired up, right? And then Otis Carr tells everyone, like, okay, let's get out of the craft. And Ralph Ring says he didn't think that they had moved. He didn't feel anything. He was like, what? It's over? And he gets out of the craft, and they're like 2 miles down range, and Otis tells him, like, pick up some grass or like whatever you can find. If you can find a stick or something, like, pick it up, and then let's get back on the craft. They got back on the craft, they fired back up again, and went back. Ralph Ring really couldn't describe like the going back part. Like, he says, basically we did the thing with the color thing again, but I don't think he really has full memory recall on that. And then once they got back, they were like, well, how was the test run? There's people that were there and saw them fly down range and come back. And I think they moved, at an extremely fast pace. And like basically this whole thing creates some sort of wormhole or a distortion and time continuum fields around it. It beats the fuck out of me how it works. But the end all be all is that they couldn't really remember what had even happened. And then Otis Carr was like, check your pockets. And they like went in their pockets, and like then they're feeling this grass and stuff, and it's almost like they moved so fast that their like spiritual mind couldn't like quite catch up to them immediately, and it like takes time for that to happen.
Well, there is a popular theory that we are just projections of multidimensional beings onto this plane of existence. And that's the whole theory behind reincarnation, is that we're actually not even. I mean, this plane is just like fingers poking into jello.
Yeah.
This existence is jello.
Well, and I think Ralph Ring even says like how they think it works, that everything is just like a bunch of shutters that are opening and closing like really, really quickly. And if you know how like a fluorescent light works, it actually flickers really fast. So fast that you don't notice it. But it's actually a strobing bulb. Fluorescent bulbs strobe at a really fast pace, and I think halogens do too, and I think LEDs do as well. Maybe LEDs can do both. You could have an LED that saves power and oscillates on and off, or
light is emitted when an electron goes from a high level down to a lower level. So it might flicker depending on the rate at which, I mean, like if a whole bunch of them continually do it, it would be a constant light. But if there is a set time in between, you know, how often they lose their light, that could flicker.
Yeah, that's what like a ballast.
Fluorescent light.
That's what the ballast does for a fluorescent light, right?
Yeah.
It converts AC electricity into a different form of electricity that makes that bulb flicker really, really fast, and you save energy that way too because you're not using as much power. You're kind of spreading that power out. Whereas an incandescent bulb doesn't flicker at all, right? At any.
I don't believe so. No.
I mean, unless you have power surges going on, but. An incandescent bulb is continuously burning like 60 watts, right, for like a fairly weak indoor bulb. That's a lot of power too. So you can use power more efficiently by kind of spreading it out, and we don't notice the flickering. And they say that it doesn't affect us, right? I think there's a lot of people that would debate that.
Let me think about this. So fluorescent lights are an excitation of the mercury particles contained in a xenon, neon, argon, whatever the hell the mist. So it's, because
I don't know how
that
it
flickers. That flickers.
Where's the mercury in a fluorescent bulb? It's that powder, isn't it? That white powder.
I believe that's what it is. But that's the stuff that's actually lining up when you use a like.
And
a
then the tube is
light.
like full of xenon gas or something, right? And then depending on like the gas mixes, we could be wrong about that, but I don't know.
Okay, I know that there's an anode and a cathode, and when the electricity moves from one to the other, it charges a particular particle, and I think it's transferred through the gas, the noble gas, into the mercury dust or gas or whatever it becomes, and when those are what light up. Those are when they lose their electrons. Those are the ones that light up.
Well, like an electron hits it, excites it, and that and then it goes into the the electron cloud.
And when it lets go, when it
powers down,
that's when the light goes out.
The light, right?
And that hits another thing, and it's a chain reaction.
God, why do you even try to describe it? It's a terrible thing. It's a chain reaction too, because it can fly.
Because thinking about this, if we are correct and we are remembering things correctly, we are creating new pathways that are making new connections. I love
scooping up some more overflow is what we're doing. We're just trying to scoop up some overflow.
I love the internet. Don't get me wrong. I love the fact that a world of information is at my fingertips, but there is something to be said for knowing things.
Well, and where to look.
Oh, yeah.
Like that Otis T. Carr story. Had you ever heard about that?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very fascinating story, but, the news isn't you're not going to find out about that story from 60 years ago from the news, not unless you, go looking through microfiche, and good luck finding it,
Well, think about how many stories are lost all the time. I mean, everybody is just a story. That's when we come down to the essence of what we end up being, we are just a story in the end.
Yeah.
And if our story dies, then, kind of so do we. I mean, everybody knows who Abraham Lincoln is. And even though they may have some of the facts wrong, or some of the, it's all conjecture at this point, because nobody is alive who was alive then, at least that we know of.
From what year?
Abraham Lincoln?
Oh, yeah, no one's alive from that.
Yeah. I mean, that we know of.
Well, there's one exception to that under conspiracy theory black beltism. And that is this fellow that said he went back in time and he was present for the Gettysburg Address. This guy, he said his dad was in the CIA, and in like the 60s they were doing projects, like I think it was under Project Pegasus or something like that. They were sending kids, mostly they would send kids back in time because they would be able to come back. Like sending older people, it's like if you're plugged into the Matrix too long, like when you're traveling through time using this crazy alien technology they supposedly had or something like that. That if most of their experiments, they were using CIA men's children and sending them back in time. And this kid says that, now he's a grown man and he's a lawyer in Oregon and an author of a book explaining his story about how he went back in time and went to the Gettysburg Address. But they say that there's a photograph of the Gettysburg Address, and there's a kid in the photograph that's wearing like huge shoes, and that's this guy. And he's still alive, right? So he was there for the Gettysburg Address, so he spent a little bit of time in the Clinton era and came back, and he's still around.
How did you describe Lincoln's voice?
I don't know. I should find this guy's name.
Yeah, because I know. Well, there is evidence to suggest that Lincoln's voice was not as we imagine it to be, or as it has been portrayed in the 20th and 21st century.
Dude, all I had to search was time travel to Gettysburg Address.
Okay.
And it came up. So the guy's name is Andrew Basiago, Basiago. Okay, but his stories are way crazier than that. He says that there's a base on the moon that they can use this sort of technology to or is a different technology to send people to a moon base using some space elevator thing that goes at a super fast pace.
Okay.
And it's hyperdimensional. When you're inside of he says it's just like an elevator. You go in, the doors close, but as you're going, the walls start to kind of light up and kind of come in and close in on you, sort of, and then the doors open and you're on Mars. So that's this guy, Andrew Basiago. And he says that he went to Mars, I think a couple times. And he says that there's a breathable. Sorry, it's just too absurd sometimes. I can't help but to find it kind of funny. He says that there's a breathable atmosphere on Mars, although most of the time, if you're outside, you're wearing a mask, and there's large species that live that are indigenous to Mars that are there, including carnivorous large animals. And he says that there's been 100,000 people sent to Mars, and 75,000 people that have been to Mars have died on Mars, and it's really, really easy to die there. That there's predation by large creatures is primarily what people die of. So he says that this space elevator, it's kind of in a rocky outcrop. So, and it's kind of hidden in there. So if you get chased by one of these giant killing machine things, you can hide in that area too to get away from the space creatures. There's that giant Grand Canyon on Mars, and it's right near there. So he said that one time he went to it, and he went out to go look over at the Grand Canyon, and he was looking over, and Barack Obama was standing next to him in a suit.
What?
Yeah. And he also says that when he was getting trained, that Barack Obama was in his classes for this training.
Okay.
It's a pretty good conspiracy theory. You have to search the internet pretty hard to find this kind of crazy, I'll tell you what. But I don't know. Like, I think this guy's even done like coast to coast interviews, and it's interesting to listen to this guy and hear his story. I mean, could it be possible that there's a Mars base and advanced flying technology to get us there, the space elevator? I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
sure.
I can't say that it doesn't exist, though.
It definitely could exist.
I would be totally irrational to say that can't be, because that would mean that there'd be people in the government and they'd be keeping the secret. Well, apparently not all of them, if that's the case, right?
Well,
You're saying no one's told the secret? No, there is somebody. He's right here. His name's Andrew Basiago.
Well, that's
It's like if you actually explore these sorts of logic and like give these things the time of day, you'll rot your brain.
Well, possibly. Logic can lead us into places that don't necessarily logic is wonderful. It's a fantastic thing. I love logic.
But studying human behavior surrounding it, have you ever had somebody like call you and tell you something that like for a period of time you just couldn't even believe it? You were like, there's no freaking way, and then you found out later on that like, yeah, that person did get in a car accident, you know, and you couldn't cope with, and it's like actually like the first stage of grieving, isn't it? Denial.
Well, it doesn't really matter what order they come in, but I think, yeah, denial is the one
Like,
to claim.
yeah. Have you ever experienced that where, like, I mean, I've had it happen when I've heard certain news about certain family members and stuff. I mean, there's a few times that, like, really stand out in my mind where I'm like, I was, like, in a state of shock from just hearing this, and the subject that comes to mind wasn't even, like, anything really bad. It was just something that I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And I had never heard, and it was just like, there's no, in my mind I'm like, no way, like, what the F, like, what? Like, I couldn't believe it, and like, you know, if it was something like hearing about Andrew Basiago, I'd just be like, well, that's fucking dumb, and just close the tab and never think about it again, you know. But, you know, eventually I actually had to process this because, you know, it involves, you know, well.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I'm going to go back to this metaphor I was using earlier. Stories are also how we teach. I mean, when we're trying to teach about you know, heroism and courage, who do we talk about? We talk about Hercules. We talk about the Count de Monte Cristo. We talk about the you know, Civil War heroes. I mean, but these are just stories that we use to demonstrate. You can't discount any story. It's like you have to take them all into account. Like the Library of Alexandria.
Well, there's no story about that. I mean, that's like, I would have to say that falls in the category of like historical record. Like, for sure, that place did exist, and was burned to the ground, and
we don't know that for sure.
I think there's a pretty solid chain of.
Yeah, but as I've said before, we're not sure that anything has happened in the past, and we're not quite sure if anything's going to happen in the future.
Oh, well, on that level, yeah.
But
what year did library?
200, maybe?
Was it really that long ago? So, it was in 48 BC.
48.
So there is the possibility that place, like, never, like, it very well could be that thing, like, that was just totally made up. It's possible.
Neat, huh? I mean, you have to question history, because who wrote it?
Have you heard the missing time theory? That there's like 200 years that were just like made up because some prince like wanted to have his birthday be like 1000 AD or something like that. So like between I'm actually not very familiar with the conspiracy theory, so you'll have to look it up on YouTube. Under stuff they don't want you to know, missing time theory.
Yeah. Do you know what causes me to believe that something like that actually could happen? The only reason that we have a July and August is because Julius Augustus Caesar wanted to have 2 months named after him.
Yeah. You can see what narcissism could do, and the conspiracy theory has like some architectural evidence that there's architecture that existed at certain times where I think it points to there being like no progress at all for 200 years, basically. Where, well, we know this was built this year and this was built this year, but it's almost exactly the same. And it's got the same stonemason's little signature on the bottom or something. I don't think it's accurate evidence, but...
well, I mean, ridiculous stuff like this happens all the time. I mean, the only reason that...
Well, there wasn't good record keeping. There wasn't any global system of keeping records up until... I mean, you could argue until the internet came about, really.
Yeah.
That people are fact-checking each other and bullshit doesn't fly. Sort of. Bullshit only flies so far. Which is around the world in about 6 seconds or something.
Yeah,
like
around
that.
the world in 6 seconds.
Bullshit only travels so fast.
Well.
It's at the speed of light.
I was gonna say, what is it? A lie can go around the world in less than a minute, and to repair the damage takes centuries.
Yeah. Yeah, the crop circles are a good example of that. At least according to certain people that that Terence McKenna says that it was made up. Right? That the first crop circles were made by a certain guy, and he proved in an experiment that like he had a competition that really demonstrated the ability for people to make crop circles, and
in a very short amount of time under the cover of darkness.
And that, basically there are crop circles that pop up all the time.
Sure.
And there's websites dedicated to documenting every single one of them. And I mean, I don't know. Are they all made by humans? They could be. I guess there's the possibility that like maybe we started a trend. I don't know, but probably the most logical explanation would be that they're all made by humans, right? That's kind of the one that definitely shoves asking and answering a lot more questions back in the box that we don't have to look at. If you say, it's all humans, no evidence here, nothing to see here, folks, go on home and drink your Pepsi and watch your Fox News and CNN and eat your craft food and drink your fluoridated water. And don't ask any questions. You understand?
I have often been a fan of saying that the simplest explanation is more often than not the truth.
And that's there's a name for that.
It's an axiom.
Yeah. Why can't I think of the name? There's a more specific name for it than axiom, though. It's Ozzy's razor.
Occam's razor.
Occam's razor.
Yeah.
Ozzy.
But that's what it is.
Sharon! I see the carpet again! Sharon! And then he's like, you give him just a little bit of cocaine, and then he's like, well, you know what, I am quite ready to perform at this moment. Please hand me my guitar. I am ready to go. And then once the coke is gone, he's like, sing! Hey, the kids, they're doing a bunch of drugs. Well, you gave him money. Not too much. How much did you give him? Oh, like 15 grand. What, for a daily allowance? Oh, yeah, Sean, for a daily allowance, I gave him 15 grand. Oh, Ozzy, you shouldn't have done that. You know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to go on Oprah, and I'm going to present myself as a reasonable person. I'm also going to do a TV show. It's going to be a really good TV show. It's going to be about dogs. But I have such name recognition now that I only need to do the voiceover. I don't even have to appear on camera.
Have you seen?
But I talk about breeds of dogs on the BBC.
Have you seen pictures of him from the 70s? I mean,
I'm going to look at it right now.
He actually looks like a real human being. I mean, he looks like a corpse now.
Sharon!
But in the 70s, I mean, he was a human being. I mean, that sounds so terrible.
Dude, remember that time somebody threw a bat on stage and he thought it was a rubber bat and he bit the head off of it, but it was actually like a real bat?
Yeah. And he's known for that. I mean, that's,
that is like... I just had to rehash that. If nobody knows that that's a fact, that's a fact. And here's a good joke for you. There's a bear and a rabbit, and they're in the woods. All right, and the bear turns to the rabbit, and you know, both of them are like they're both doing their business, right? They're both taking a shit. Bear's taking a shit in the woods, shocking, right? And the rabbit's taking a shit next to it, and the bear says to the rabbit, "Hey, rabbit, do you ever have that problem with shit sticking to your fur?" And then the rabbit's like, "No, I never have that problem." So the bear wipes his ass with the rabbit. Have you ever heard that one?
Nope. That's a new one on me. I like that.
It's a really simple joke. It could be told in a lot less words too, but
yeah. I like that one a lot. I'm gonna have to tell that now.
it's a pretty good one, isn't it? Ozzy Osbourne in the 70s. Wow, look at this picture of him.
Yep.
I mean, that's like a good-looking man right there.
Like I said, he looked like a human being.
Yeah, there's a lot of rock stars that don't age very gracefully.
The Rolling Stones.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you hear about that they were doing like a
Lollapalooza.
Thank you. But with all the old rockers.
Oh my.
In the desert in Nevada, I think, for a weekend.
Well, it's the only place that they could be preserved. I mean, you know why mummies look so good, right?
It's because they live in the desert.
They had a nickname for it. Because they call it, there's like some official name for it, but it's put on by the same people that put on Lollapalooza. God, I can't say it. I can't even do it.
Lollapalooza.
Yeah, they have like a funny ass name, a nickname for it. Oldapalooza. Senior Palooza. No, I can't remember it. Damn it. Someone can hit us in the comments. See, if we were doing a live stream of an audio broadcast, then I could have Twitter up and people would tweet what it is that I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
Of course, then there were, for every one person who was tweeting what you wanted to say, there would be 50 people saying, "Why don't you know this, you idiot? Blah, 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 blah."
I know. I'd be like, this is an ism. This is why you love this show, for some reason.
Yeah.
It's the suspense, It's like doing that hook intro, and then going to commercial for 10 minutes. We don't have the fucking commercials, people. So you know what you get instead? You get some long pauses of me trying to figure out what it is that I was thinking about, and trying to pin it down. So in lieu of advertising, you get me going for a little bit.
Well, I think that's all right, because how often do we sit there and just kind of go, what was I thinking of? What was I thinking?
I know.
No, I had a connection.
I'll remind you.
Wait, no. God, well, I've done this before too. What was I talking about? Where were we going with this?
You know, it's kind of funny. We recorded like a number of hours now, and there's a couple of hours there with that we were. At least I hadn't smoked weed like at all, or it had been at least 12 hours or so. So I wonder how noticeably different it is. They're like, oh, I can tell after you smoke. You get a lot more weird. Things get a little bit stranger, man.
Well, I would like to say on the positive side, there's a lot more laughing when you guys are stoned.
Right. Dude, have you ever like fainted? Like, have you ever like fainted from like being like dehydrated or like from exhaustion and fainted?
Mm-mm. Well, I've passed out.
You've passed out
from being too tired, but I've never.
Have you ever had it happen? Like, dude, like I had it happen one time, like really bad. I passed out in front of my house. I fell down and I hit my head like on like the edge of the grass. So like in older suburbs, you know, like the grass gets taller and taller as like more and more leaves get turned into soil, and then you kind of have like a ledge of grass. So I hit my head on the ledge of grass, which like wouldn't have been that bad at all. Like it actually probably just kind of like the best place for you to fall and hit your head. You know, it's really soft. But I had dreadlocks, and like so, one of the dreads got like I guess kind of pinched as my head was like sliding, like that sliding motion, and it like tore my head open. I had to go get stitches and shit. But when I was getting ready to pass out,
okay,
dude, things got like really weird, man.
So are you?
It was like things were like things were like flashing. Like reality was like kind of like flashing and like super trippy, like leading into that, and like I think I passed out like 5 or 6 times before I passed out, but like micro passing out where you're kind of like you're halfway there. You're like, oh, and then you're losing your balance. You're like, oh, I'm okay, and then you just like straighten it out, and then you like take a few more steps. And you're like, uh-oh, whoa. Have you ever had that feeling? Shit gets weird, man.
No, but but the way that you described it sounds like I never do. Okay, the closest thing I could probably describe is I had I fell off the back of a golf cart once, and took a whack to the head, and convinced everybody that I was fine and I could drive down to the hospital and this, that, and the other thing. And it was almost 2 hours after the event, as I'm driving, I'm probably, I don't know, half a mile from the hospital. Suddenly the entire world started spinning. And,
weird.
And
that's
so,
exactly what I'm talking about.
And so I was able to park. I was able to get into a parking lot that was right nearby and park, but I couldn't move fast. I mean, if it was like almost impossible to move faster than 1 inch every second. I mean, it was
like moving your arm through the air. You're like moving, like right now, you're kind of moving your arm slowly through the air, like almost like you're swimming through.
Like through water, yeah. I mean,
that's kind of like what ketamine's like. Have you ever taken ketamine?
I on a couple of occasions when I was
it's kind of like that.
Rolling.
It's not exactly the same, but
we would slip into K-holes. Yeah,
slip into a K-hole. I only ever used it just a little bit.
Oh, tranquilizer. I mean, it's.
When I was younger, I would get hypoglycemic, where my blood sugar would get really low, and I would kind of experience a similar thing of like kind of falling out from like low blood sugar. It's weird, like these altered states of consciousness, all of them are kind of related, sort of. Like and pre and post concussion, so you had a concussion is what happened when you fell off that golf cart. You were concussed. Yeah, and I got a concussion from hitting my head, and plus I think my blood sugar was really low. I think that's why that happened. But man, I had a really tough time trying to like figure out because I got up, but I didn't I couldn't really remember like everything that was happening as it was happening after I hit my head. And so I like went inside and one of my roommates asked me, he's like, "Yo, are you okay?" And I'm like, "I don't know, man. Like, I think so. I just." He's like, "Well, you're bleeding. There's like blood running down your forehead." I'm like, "Really?" And like I touched my head and like I felt blood and I like looked at my hand. I was like, "Whoa, dude! Like something's fucking weird, you know?" And I looked in the mirror and one of my pupils was way big and the other one was like super small. Yeah. And I was like, "Oh." Ew. And then one of my other neighbors was like, "Oh, I'll drive you to the hospital." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And it took a while for my brain to kind of come back online. So really.
Well, I mean, it's probably some kind of protective mode. You know, we don't understand the brain. We don't understand how, damage occurs to the brain and what it does in the long run. I mean, the NFL didn't even admit that concussions did anything until when?
Yeah, and what's really crazy, if you get a concussion, especially if you're under like 18 years of age, and then you get another concussion within like a week or so, it can kill you just immediately.
It's frightening.
Yeah, that can happen. That can actually happen. And I didn't learn about that until like a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's been... Well, there was a movie about it, starring Will Smith. I can't think of the name of it. I think it was called Concussion. But yeah, the brain is
That's a big topic with like UFC fights and the UFC and Ultimate Fighting and combat sports in general. Like, when do they stop the fight? And like I'm a huge UFC fan. Like I definitely got into that recently and absolutely love it. But it's a blood sport, and there's times in the past where I got into it before as well, and then like you're watching people like beating each other up, and that's, I think even just viewing that material, it definitely changes something in your brain. Like you don't, like whatever you're watching can definitely like affect you.
Oh yeah.
And it kind of, because if you're watching people fight, it's like your brain doesn't see that as any different than seeing people fighting right in front of you in real life. And that happening right in front of you, and you have to think that like in our instincts, it's built in when we see things like that happening, like probably different parts of our brain get triggered.
Ooh, I mean, it's like who. I mean, live fights. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Live fights have been watched for years. I mean.
Okay, I just bridged this whole connection, and this actually is pretty much like totally verifiable through and through. Yeah, people that have more adrenaline rushes in their lives die earlier. It's one of the reasons, like cops that don't die of unnatural causes, they die earlier because they have so many more adrenaline rushes in their lives. And men, on average, experience more adrenaline rushes during a lifespan than women do. Right, so there is a correlation there between how many times you have adrenaline rushes in your life and dying earlier. And when I watch UFC fights, I'll get adrenaline rushes watching UFC fights. Like especially if it's a fight that I'm like really looking forward to. I don't necessarily get it with every single fight that I'm watching, because sometimes if they're fighting but they're not really engaging with each other, it's just a boring fucking fight. I'm just like, oh, you fucking people, like you guys. I can't help but to think these fighters are dumb. Like you want to try to be putting on a show as well to gain your stature in.
Yeah, that's why
in the limelight. Like you're in the limelight. Like make it. If you can create like a hell of a highlights reel, that helps you get more money out of the UFC. Even your contract can be more money when they know you have more star power. But anyways, I digressed.
Oh, no, that's why the World Wrestling Federation
so pull it through. If you're watching UFC fights, if you're watching fights, if you're experiencing more adrenaline rushes sitting on your couch, like you're actually shortening your life by watching UFC. Like that, you could argue that. I'm not necessarily saying that like for 100% that's really definitely happening, but there's definitely like a logic flow that could
I can
explain that.
Well, because if you're stressing a system that is not ready to be stressed, such as sitting on the couch watching TV, and suddenly you're getting this, fight or flight thing that stresses the system that isn't used to being, as opposed to, say, someone who doesn't have that reaction as often, so they stress their system with exercise or something of that nature, so they don't get it as often. I mean, that would...
Well, adrenaline, especially when you have an adrenaline rush, that's like doing damage to your body.
Yeah. Well, because it's
your pulse goes up and you're shaking. I mean, it's more than just like the amount of damage there's. You could argue like going for a jog and getting your heart rate up, it doesn't really even do any damage to your body. But like whereas when you're experiencing adrenaline running through your system, you're actually doing some damage that's going to shorten your lifespan.
Yeah.
It just so happens, at least for me, watching UFC fights, I get fucking adrenaline rushes watching them. It's almost like, oh, I can't even really watch this shit too much without, without hurting myself.
So is that so? Now I'm gonna pose the question to you: Is that an indulgent pleasure that broadens the quality of your life, or is it to put a somewhat a religious term to it? Is it karmic retribution for watching people?
Functionally, right? You get hurt along with the people that are getting hurt as well. It only makes sense in natural law that something like that would exist.
I'm just posing that. I'm not saying that's.
You can think of like all the things that humans do, all of the behaviors, and you can say, okay, like you can divide them into two categories. Like animal behaviors and things that we do that like are cerebral and they don't exist elsewhere in the animal kingdom. Then just to figure out what column this thing exists in, and if it's in the animal column, we kind of just need to keep that in mind. And like ultimate fighting definitely falls into like the animalistic side of what we are, and that is it.
Does it serve as a reminder of where we have come from?
I think if you look at where we're going to be 1,000 years from now, or if you were to look at some other alien civilization that has been around for 40,000 years longer than we have, like would they still have that? Would you have blood sport? Or would you try to eradicate that from... I mean, I absolutely love watching the fights, too, I don't want to take anything away from it. It's great entertainment. As far as sports go, I can argue, like, it's the best sport because, people are... It's all on the one person. And it has the most dire consequences. And it's a game of skill. And there's heritage that goes into it. We've been fighting for so long. There's so many reasons for us to have it and for it to be here. And it's not like I'm going to get rid of it. It's not like my opinion has any say on the matter of whether or not it exists in this world. It's going to continue to exist for a very long time, well beyond by the time I die. It's still going to be there. People will still be boxing and sport fighting and I don't know how.
Well, I mean, it's very possible. This has been explored also in tons of science fiction. You good? Or?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. I mean, going to the very first time travel story.
Which is
H.G. Wells? Well, yeah. Is it H.G. Wells or is it Mark Twain?
Or, I mean, people are probably going to argue that there are other ones. Okay, the first American, popular time travel story.
And they ponder what could be in the future, how things will be different. That's where it all comes from, right?
Yeah, because, I mean, the human race, according to H.G. Wells, the human race, splits into two. The physical, the primitive, grunty things, and then the cerebral, thinking, smaller prey things. Which I wish I could remember the name. God, it's been so long. It's been almost 25 years since I read that book. Oh, God, I feel old.
It's alright, all that science is pretty much outdated by now anyways.
But I mean just the way that things can affect us, the smallest little, who watches this, who gets entertainment from this, who goes in a different direction. Is that a fundamental change in will it affect the rest of the selection process of evolution? I mean, I'm just curious.
And like the evolution of humans, and it's all very, very strange. I remember when I was like in 12, I think I was 12, I was in school, and one of my teachers was saying like, well, maybe 50 generations from now, everyone will just be like a light brown color, and won't that be great, And I was like thinking, like I kind of like when he told me that, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, right?
Sure.
I guess.
It's
if you don't know anything, I mean, it makes a lot of sense if you don't know anything about how people select mates and the propensity for people to select the people of the same color.
It's a logical fallacy, but
I mean, it'll be a long ass time before the ethnicities blend into one on this planet, man. I mean, you have to have, all you would have to have that happen, and it could happen in 40 years. Or, well, not 40 years, but in 100 years. Yeah. Because all you have to have is an asteroid that comes in that we're not looking for because we're too busy warring with each other as a planet, rather than putting some money into protecting the whole planet from total wipeout. Since we're not looking for asteroids, we get hit by an asteroid, almost everybody gets knocked out, except for those people that are on the Ark in that movie 2012, And then, there's just, they got enough of a blend there, and, a lot of those people were billionaires and stuff, so, they probably aren't going to procreate. A bunch of those people were old, too. So it's almost like, I don't know what would happen, but within like 3 generations, you'd have one, you'd probably have a pre-type bottleneck there. And it'd probably be like 5 generations. So 250 years after that, you would have one homogeneous species on planet Earth. And maybe because there's so much inbreeding, we just turn into gray aliens, and then that's when we learn how to time travel. Ooh, then we got the keys to the universe, but now we're like these fucked up, ugly creature things, and then they're like, now we're like trying to get, now they're like the future us are coming back in time and abducting people and trying to like breed with them to carry on their species in the future.
Oh.
Right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that now. Now check
but
this
like
out.
They're so unfuckable because look at the stock they came from. All those people on those boats in 2012 that nobody liked anyways.
Yeah,
they're like...
Okay. I want everybody to look up the bootstrap paradox on this one. Okay, thank you everybody.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Causal loops. You can't change history if you're part of it.
That story has been regurgitated like a few times in kind of like different forms and fashion. Like the new Matthew McConaughey movie where he goes into space looking for...
Gravity?
No, that's... Sandra Bullock.
No.
Sandra Bullock. It's pretty close.
Interstellar.
Interstellar, yeah. Have you seen it?
No.
I haven't either. I've heard it's pretty good, but there's some elements to that storyline.
Well, if I remember correctly, I think they did the research to find out how long it would take, back on Earth for somebody traveling light speed. Is that correct? Is that what happens?
Yeah.
They go to a different
He goes
solar system?
I think. I mean, I'm wondering. I read the plot, so like I could totally spoiler it, even though I haven't seen the movie. Just terrible. Like I'll just go online and I'll read the plot for movies. I'll go to the Wikipedia page and read the plot, rather than going and seeing the movie. A lot of the times, when especially this is the way to do it when like you work with somebody and they're like, go see this movie, and they're like just hounding you about it, and there's like super fucking annoying and you don't want to go see it. Just go online and just read the plot for the movie. And then when they talk about stuff, you can be like, oh yeah, blah, 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 and you can kind of go along with it and convince them that you saw it when you didn't. And then get them off your back, basically. I don't know. Have you ever worked in that sort of an environment where you have people around you all the time?
Every now and again, sure, yeah.
But not for like an extended period. I worked in the same place for like 8 years, right?
Well, I worked in a pizza shop for... Well, I delivered pizza for 11 years, but I worked in this one particular pizza shop for about 8 years, part-time. But everybody was really cool about that.
Well, and you guys are busy, too.
Well,
if you're in an office environment and there's like water tower talk time.
Oh, I could never.
That's the environment where you have people that are going to be like hounding you to like see movies, and that's like the quick hand solution. Just go read the plot. Yeah, I don't want to do any. I don't want to spoil that movie Interstellar, because it from reading the plot and listening to reviews, I would have to say it seems like it's worthwhile to go see. I want to see that other new one, Passengers.
I am so
previews for that one.
I am so unplugged from knowing what's going on.
Passengers has God damn it. J-Law, Jennifer Lawrence in it, and Chris Pratt, and the previews show that they're like in pods, and they're going to like a new planet, and they're in like they're in sleep mode basically.
Sure.
They lay down in the pods and they're in sleep mode for 90 years.
Okay.
That's pretty much what the trailer shows, and a little bit more. But it's a really cool looking movie. And I read a little bit of the plot on that one too, but I read just enough where I was like, I'm not even going to ruin it for myself. Like, I'll leave the rest open. I'll actually go see that movie.
Oh, okay. Are these like, are we trying to, is it like isolation movies or something? Horror movies? Or is it just a story?
Well, these
like
are all
science
like
fiction movies?
Yeah, you've got like, I think the Passengers one is going to be not so much like science fiction as like a pretty plausible story.
Okay.
Like it doesn't. There's no stretching of time-space continuum or anything like that in the movie Passengers. I don't think there's anything like that. But Interstellar definitely has some like hyper-dimensional elements to its plot line.
Sure, because they have to go this faster than light.
Which is supposedly like a crazy ass mind bender. It's done like really, really well.
Well, according to physics, the way that we understand it now, to go to the speed of light, you basically have to occupy every point. Your mass becomes every point in the space-time continuum. But that's why it doesn't work, and we have other sciences now. That's why it's the theory of relativity instead of the law.
Contact was really good on kind of like walking a different road. Totally.
I appreciated that look at it. I also like the approach that there is no a limit when you're sleeping. You can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Anytime.
On your DMT ride while you're asleep. Have you ever heard of David Wilcock? He's a lecturer, and he's a contributor for like History Channel for Ancient Aliens.
Okay.
But he's definitely like David Wilcock is definitely like a quadruple black belt in conspiracy theory and like spiritual studies and stuff. And his lectures are great. There's like I think there's like 4 or 5 of them. One of them is called what is it? The 2012 Enigma. He like put out. He had that at the top of Google videos back in the day too for a few weeks.
Okay.
The 2012 Enigma. It's a great lecture that's done by him. It's a crash course of some historical knowledge. If you haven't seen it, it's well worth watching. But he says, not in the 2012 Enigma, but in other lectures, that the device that you see in Contact is basically exactly what our government has in like some facility.
Okay.
They have something that looks almost exactly like that, and I think it's called like the Yellow Book or something like that. But they can use it to see into the future and the past or something. But like those spinning rings and like dropping the pod thing, I think David Wilcock said in the past that's a real government like top secret project.
Well, Carl Sagan did work for the government, but I don't know. Did he describe it in the book? I don't. It's been about 20 years.
Carl Sagan worked for the government, and he wrote the book Contact.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
He was part of.
I did not know that at all.
I think he worked for NASA, if not. Well, I know he worked for NASA, but I think he also worked for Department of Defense, maybe.
Well, that's crazy. So maybe he didn't. Maybe that is true.
But yeah, no, he wrote the book. He did the Cosmos. Have you ever seen Cosmos?
I've seen like short parts of a few of them. They're pretty cool. But they've been redone
By Neil deGrasse Tyson and Seth MacFarlane. Yeah. We're going to enter into the starship of the mind, where imagination can take us to billions and billions of stars.
I don't really like Neil deGrasse Tyson because he doesn't believe because he thinks we actually landed on the moon. What an asshole! That's why I don't like Neil deGrasse Tyson for that reason. But for everything else, I really like him. He's a good speaker, and he puts on a good show. I've seen him. Have you seen him on Bill Maher? He's on Bill Maher's show a couple times.
I think so, probably.
Yeah, there's a funny interview with him, man. It was him and there was like an executive from GM on the show.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was really fun.
Did you ever see the one where Christopher Hitchens and like, what was the rapper's name? Were on Bill Maher. I just had it on my mind too, and I forgot it. It wasn't Ja Rule. It was a pretty crazy episode. Pretty crazy conversation in there.
Well, he's got a lot of interesting. I think Larry Wilmore did a good job for a while on the nightly show. And then they fiddled with the format and they tried to make it something else. But for a short time, I think Larry Wilmore had a comparable kind of setup to Bill Maher in the same free expression. You know, well, Bill sometimes does it, but mostly non-condescending of ideas. You know, saying, you know, unless it's just outrageously stupid.
The interview I was thinking about, or the episode I was thinking about, was when it was Mos Def and Christopher Hitchens on Bill Maher, and it's a really interesting watch because Mos Def is talking about how like we definitely need to like get rid of nuclear weapons and like we can't be fucking using these things anymore, which is like a good fucking argument.
Yeah.
I think Christopher Hitchens kind of, you know, there's another side to this argument, you know, and Christopher Hitchens presents the argument, and Mos Def definitely didn't do. Christopher Hitchens had a lot more research and facts and knowledge and on his side about this matter than Mos Def did.
Sure.
But the way that Christopher Hitchens handles it, and it's really he did it very elegantly. You know, I mean, it's very easy to dress somebody down when you say something really stupid. You know, I mean, it's super easy to do. People will probably do it in the comments on our videos about me, especially. You know, but you can also respectfully, you know, have a conversation and disclose additional information to another party to give them more understanding of the situation to better assess it. And you can also selectively give information to sway somebody's opinion.
Yeah.
And that's called being a salesman.
I believe the respectable term is marketing. We can't do this again.
I know. It's an hour, so it's an hour and 40.